from my work with Unsolved Mysteries, with Strange Universe Television at Paramount, hard copy and whatever else, I met a guy who's all up in this. So here's an interesting aspect of it. A fellow in Miami, who called himself Adrian. He was a little Cuban guy. His real name was Manny something. I'm not going to say his last name, but it's Manuel. But he's a Cuban refugee. And he's a Cuban refugee, and he single-handedly had the greatest photographs, the greatest film of anybody I've ever seen. It makes Billy Meier look like he's photographing models and toys. This guy, with his girlfriend, by the way, Claudia, was actually getting on the ships, riding on the ships, taking photographs from out the window in the ships. I personally handed him a camera out in the Nevada desert and said, go take something, sealed up the camera, put wax on it, the whole deal. So he couldn't fake anything, searched him first, went out for like 2 hours, came back with film of a mothership going into a vortex and all kinds of crazy stuff. So I did a whole interview with him, called The Man Who Fell to Earth. That was, his opinions and his experiences and, his predictions, none of which came true, by the way. But his photos. By the way, the reason nobody's ever heard of this case is because he would never give us the rights to any of the film, to any of his photographs. We walked him around to people in Hollywood, and we had to take like business cards out of his hand because, part of what I've learned about the Pleiadians is they have rotten taste in people. And, he was,
you are so true right there. Rotten taste in people. Yes.
Rotten taste in people. I mean, I dealt with Billy Meier, and we were going to do an hour special on him, an hour special on Unsolved Mysteries, the number 4 ranked show on television. Going to pay him $25,000 for an interview for the whole thing. And he turned on us, at the very last minute, exactly like he did on MUFON. For example, I'll give you an idea. MUFON was going to sponsor a national exhibit, across a tour, if you will, across the United States of Billy Meier's film, his material, totally legitimized his contracts. And at the very last minute, Billy turned on MUFON. And because of something that was going on with Lee and Britt Elders, who owned the footage and had to do with Wendell Stevens or something, but at the last minute, there was a falling out between MUFON and Billy Meier. And the next day, MUFON came out and said the Billy Meier case was a hoax, said Billy Meier was fake and he was a hoax and the whole thing, when they were going to sponsor him nationally. And the same thing happened with me at Unsolved Mysteries with my partner Bob Keviott, where suddenly Billy writes a letter that says he doesn't like somebody I know, because I was friends with Fred Bell, and Fred Bell's been like, he's been like my Dutch uncle since I was like 5, and because Fred claimed that he had Pleiadian contacts with Semyaze, and Billy claims he's like the only contactee on Earth, he turned around and said, well, I don't want to work with Sean. And my producer said, John Cosgrove had a funny comment. He said, so Sean, are these guys abducted by UFOs and turned into assholes, or are they already assholes before the aliens get a hold of them? And he nixed the whole thing with Unsolved Mysteries, and so pissed off Bob Keviott that Bob Keviott actually pitched a special to the network called World's Greatest Hoaxes, where he tore Billy apart, actually sicked, and I think guys who are mentally unstable personally, but sicked all of Billy's critics on Billy and tore the case apart. Tore him apart, tore everything apart.
From the very beginning, that speaks of remote influencing communities, thousands or hundreds that are taught simplistic esoteric practices, whether you call it in meneteric goats at a very basic level, but remote influencing battalions do exist, and you are, to me, showing example after example or example of that.
Well, here's the weird part about it. When we went and visited Billy in 1990, and we were there with Wendell Stevens, which was kind of a clandestine thing because Wendell wasn't supposed to leave the country and all this, but, we got there, we met with Billy, I became very good friends with his son Methuselah. Methuselah came and, stayed at my house for a while, took him to Disneyland, bought him a cowboy hat that he's never taken off his head, because every photo is him in this dumb, it's this, black cowboy hat. But we were told from jump that no matter what you do, and it's interesting that you would say that, Andrew, because I wrote a movie about the Meier case. I read 3,700 pages of contact notes, all 5 of his contact books, and then, Wendell's books on it and the whole thing, and I turned this whole thing into a screenplay. And I was told that you will never get anywhere with the Billy Meier case, no matter what you do, that there's not only a curse on it, but exactly what you said, for everything that I've done with this. And by the way, the script got a 5-star rating. It's at Creative Artists Agency. This should be taken to Spielberg. This is a great script. This should be going around to all the big stars, blah, 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 blah. and then the person that said that got fired, and then that whole division went away, and then the CAA connection went away. So no matter what I've been able to do throughout the years, every single time we come back to the Meier case or my script message from the Pleiades, I was told you'll never get anywhere with it, that there are influences on this planet that will stop you. And that's been exactly true.
Remote influencers, brigades of them. Yes.
Yeah.
And you can call them paid trolls. It's, again, consciousness creates our reality. And if you have 10,000 people projecting at the Sean or the Andrew or the Lisa, and each one gets a different message a different week. So morning, they're projecting X at you. Afternoon, they're projecting X at you. You always have this thing in your frequency, and then you never know which is truly you. And this is when the whispers and all the other influences actually take over your authentic voice.
There we go.
And that's why we have to, we all have to get into our feelings, because the one place where the Nazis cannot go, which is where our fountain of resource is in the heart center. Everything about Nazis, the thing about Nazis is they're everywhere but the heart center. And that's where we are. That's where we can be, and we can project out from there. That's the solution.
That's our physical intelligence.
Correct.
The mind is the greatest deception. It's our physical intelligence that will always overcome the projections.
So we have to learn not to trust our eyes, not to trust our ears, but to trust our feelings.
No, feelings are emotion and still in the mind. The physical intelligence is experiencing everything simultaneously, including all past, present, and future.
Well, that's what I call a feeling, but yeah, whatever.
Amen.
It's not an emotion. It's a different thing, but yeah, it's
as Boston would say, it's more than a feeling.
Feeling, exactly.
And they do things like this. Some of these events are planned to determine how much the resistance of Free Earth is there and ready to react.
And to find out, how,
Right.
how quickly,
Right.
yes. And of course, all of the major...
and it allows them to test their data.
Right, so it could be no more unusual than a test balloon going up.
Correct.
Okay. And they do that on all the major media like Facebook and all the different social media sites. And that's all pretty much run by artificial intelligence.
And teams of remote influencers.
Okay, so Google and all the major...
Well, the actual people in Google, no, they're separate. These are the franchises that I spoke about in an earlier episode.
Right.
They have access to the raw data that is collected on us from all those social networking data mining sites.
Oh.
That information is then fed into an artificial intelligence that makes a massive computation and makes a predictive model for each individual and then the whole and total. And the remote influencers look at this data and process the data and then begin to target lineages of people through the internet who have an ability to reach far.
But some events that have been predicted as being in the future have to be there, but they have a certain amount of...
wiggle space.
Right, to adjust and make modulation
Correct.
controls. Okay, that makes sense. And are the controllers involved with the control rooms?
Yes.
And there are how many control rooms?
40.
40.
But 21 of them have been found, 19 have not been found.
Now, do we know if those 19 are...
We talked about in the episode about Lemuria, Hollow Earth. The Hollow Earth has access to the other 19.
And
those are the primary defensive systems and offensive systems of Earth, and they made sure that those would never be gotten into the weapon systems.
Wonderful. And
weapons drive control.
Oh, good. Not like there are not enough weapons, third satellites and so on and so forth.
Well, both of you are actually on mobiles rather than the internet, so it sounds like your internet's still being attacked too.
Yes, there's 21 networks available within the viewing of the computers, and we can't log into any of them.
Interesting. Completely blocked. And what about when the show's not running? You can log in.
absolutely perfect download at the highest speeds.
Yes. Crystal clear.
The second the show ended yesterday, you could download and log in and everything.
Mm-hmm.
It's the same thing every show we do.
Well, I suppose they're probably doing this with a mixture of technology and people, and they know the show schedule. It's up there. So.
Oh yeah. Well, there's more than that. There's a reason they don't attack the cell phone network, because there are millions of people that are linked into Verizon or whatever cell carrier you are. If they go to interrupt us who are part of a oneness field, guess what? They interrupt everybody in the field, and they can't interrupt everybody on that psychic level. What they're doing on the internet is psychic pulsing, and that psychic pulsing is to make it painful for me and Nikki to be on. At the same time, the Blog Talk network, whatever radio network you're on, can't handle that psychic pulsing because it's unshielded technology purposely designed that way. That's why your TV can pulsate multidimensional propaganda at you, and you'd never know, because it's meant to interact with your aura. So when both Teal and I go on a show, or Nikki and I do a show, they attack us in a different manner. So when Nikki and I are doing a show, their type of pulsing of energy they're doing isn't meant to attack us. It's meant to go after the people and their perception of us. Nikki has very specific types of energies, so they don't want her words to be heard. On a cell phone, our voices can be misunderstood in the slightest ways and modulated on a psychic level for people to misinterpret. So they've limited our ability to go to the cell phone, but people are quality enough listeners out there that want to hear what we're saying. They can pay attention. The next thing they do is they target the archives, where they literally try to change exactly the nature of what we said.
They literally try to edit the archives, do they?
As we are speaking them live, correct.
Yes. Yes, they have.
Fascinating.
They have done that.
Mm-hmm. And they're doing that for every show?
Every show in which we turn up an energy field at a volume enough that it can change the local reality.
Which is every show?
Sort of. There are some shows that we, both Nikki and I, purposely do not put the field of energy to that level, simply because we as human beings wish to have fun shows.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like when we did the Sacred Masculine and Feminine show on that webinar, they attacked us in the beginning, all of a sudden backed out, and both Nikki and I didn't need to have the defenses at the maximum level simply because it was a natural flow of human fun and expression.
Yeah, interesting, because I think the viewers are probably becoming aware that you guys are continuously working on staying on air. And
not only that, when we're off air, we are hammering their sites, hammering their individuals until their individuals are putting up the white flag saying, please don't do it, I have no choice. And then that's when we tell them, you've got, 6 weeks of vacation, go on vacation. Otherwise, you're going to get X-lax and be on the toilet for the next 20 years.
I love that.
Or get slammed on the wall.
Yeah, that too.
Love that. Oh, dear. Must make a movie about this one day.
Save your colon and save the world.
Mm-hmm. Take a break. Take a holiday. Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Well, let's...
Whether it's geopolitics and Republicans and Democrats and the world names on stage versus those subworld names on stage like Dragon families or Rothschilds. Each and every one of those are going to go through their own propaganda internal nightmare.
Will we get to see it?
There's an old saying, okay?
Yeah.
You know, if somebody and you have a long issue, standard issues, and if it was meant to be seen, then God would let you see it.
That's right. Karma's a bitch, and if you're lucky, God will let you watch, right?
Let you watch. So those people that are meant to watch will watch. I happen to be one of those people that has the skill to watch and observe and report back. I'm not putting negativity. You know, the United States has also had some of their very special military equipment disappear. And then we have people like, we'll call the Germans, the non-Nazi factions that have been forming their own special assault groups. And their particular talents are to use psychic skills to psychically bombard a city. So that city will go into conformity and vote for who they want.
Right.
There's an entire brigade of about 3,800 German psychic assault troops that have disappeared.
They just disappeared.
Whole
Psychic assault
brigade,
troops.
the whole brigade disappeared.
But what about their families? Are these beings that don't really have any family?
This
They
is one
pick
of the
them
reasons why
specifically?
they're trying to crash airplanes.
I see.
There are certain personalities that once removed from our matrix, the matrix must cover up what they've done.
Yeah.
Now, many of these people have time-traveling memories inserted into them so that they could have the hierarchical power to be dominant over a city structure. So they have removed them from an end fixed anchored point, no longer in this reality. So what it is you have all these other realities that are now like a freight train coming to crash together and meet this person who was supposed to do something, supposed to fart on a Wednesday, buy tomatoes on a Thursdays, and psychically bombard a city on Friday, and he's not there. All of these plans that are suspended in time for those 3,600 different people are now coming to bear, and there's things all over the world that are suddenly going to go, hey, we're going to get exposed.
When Atlantis understood it was going to fall, it did the last part of the fortification process, the last pyramid process, to put control rooms on Earth. And these control rooms, there's 40 control rooms spread around. 21 of them are in control by both light and dark forces right now. But you need all 40 control rooms to raise the vibration of this planet. The Agarthan network is what oversees those other 19 that are hidden. They protect to make sure that all 40 aren't captured and controlled. They're there to be the guardians for our heritage, our inheritance. And our inheritance is we're a unified species on a dreamtime level, on a physical and a DNA level. And we're meant to return to a higher dimensional status so we can go back and begin to heal these traumatic lines of karma through graduating classes. These 15 versus 5,280 exterior species, with a species that has amnesia and held hostage in between. So whatever they choose to move is not about us. It's about countering the influences of the groups coming in.
Right.
So
they have us already.
They have us already.
They've had us for a long time.
Yeah. We're one of their aces.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
So the moves that they do, dimensionally wise, are to counter the influencing of the positive forces here.
Okay.
The positive forces are trying to enter dream times, trying to get you to have positive dreams about galactic communication, free will, sovereignty, healing. They're encouraging those things, the good things that don't violate your free will when they're trying to give you the gift. The dark entities, how do I put this, will manipulate the ones the light entities are trying to fix. So it's a chess game with them, and at times they will put some players on a self-destructive path. So the good guys will come out and try to stop it, which will invest a whole group into here. Example like Syria.
Oh,
Why won't America invest into Syria? Well, the Russians are there, their drug money's there, their slavery money's there, their black market money is there. They put all their eggs in that basket. That's a factions basket that got exposed on media. And why won't America help it? Because that would help a rebellion that wasn't started by any of the factions, but ultimately got took over by the factions because the media began to promote it as a war because it had no choice. Example, the Green Revolution in Iran. It did more to create new consciousness in the world than it did to free its people.
How so?
Because it was it was something that wasn't in the graphs and charts that they predicted.
Oh, okay.
It was a natural human event that occurred at the youth level to the adult level in a dominated and controlled area. So the systems controllers there simply never saw it coming, ever.
So that's the blind spot that can be that neither side, none of the players are truly aware of. Maybe Prime Creator,
Correct.
Yeah.
Or just the consciousness going through the waves.
Right.
I mean, in the 60s, you rejected some. In the 70s, rejected. 80s, we rejected some of their controls frequently, and movements occurred. But the technology was to take over movements really fast. That's a lot of what their technology was about.
Yeah, right. To take over
domination and control.
Right, domination and control. So that's
they
why,
learned from the 60s, because the marches there weren't supposed. We could have been free in the 60s.
Right. And how did they wrap that one up? It seems like they brought in methamphetamine and cocaine and all kinds
Heroin.
of heroin, right?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And then prescription medicines.
Yes. Oh, so as part of the shift,
And jails.
Oh, yes, the jail system.
It went from almost no one in a jail to like 12 million in jail.
Yes, and private jails. And then, of course, you have the jails without rendition.
Yep.
That are being built faster than, you can say Jack Rabbit.
Going back to the MK Ultra and some of the other earlier projects, were these individuals that went through that, were they targeted based on their DNA, their
and soul,
okay,
and soul lineage, where they'd been, what dimensions they've lived in?
So did they have hardware that was necessary, at least initially, until the advancement of this technology?
There was hardware inserted brain technology as far back as you can remember. The Atlantean Lemurians had crystalline implant technology, which was captured, and then it took a very long time for them to reverse engineer it, because the technology that we had in our bodies at that time was to make us even more in tune with Earth, the trees, the air, the gravel, the animals. That was its purpose, is the program architecture of the world interfunctioned with us in a very positive way. And then they figured out how to reverse engineer it into a control and domination system. Again, it comes back to the skin suit technology in your body, that these systems can be put in there because there's architecture framework that says if you put this crystalline implant somewhere around the pineal gland, you'll be able to interfunction with your sentience. Mm-hmm. Well, what our DNA skin suit did was it took that crystal and put it in the third eye and broke it down to its most basic pieces, and then the third eye pineal gland was amplified and created, and that's what phased it out of reality. Mm-hmm. This new technology, they'll literally stick it into your pineal gland, insert programming, and then phase it back out of reality.
Wow. And how do I stick it in there? What's the technique for putting it in?
There's the complete and total XY axis on our world. That's the 40 control rooms that I've talked about. Mm-hmm. They're able to pinpoint where absolutely everyone is in the world now, what DNA structure you have, and make a genetic sequence of who you are, what soul families you live. Just like I describe where other peoples have lived, mm-hmm. They have a very high accuracy rate of who you are, what soul you've been, where you've been, what experiences you've had.
Everything that we perceive as part of the holographic reality that's controlling us is really an illusion, in the sense that it's been created it's like the Matrix, kind of, in other words, is what I'm trying to say. We're plugged into the Matrix.
We are plugged into the Matrix, yes.
And then some of us are working in the underground
and some of us are working in the underground of the underground.
Of the underground, right. And there might be...
Because even the underground is an illusion at times.
Oh, right.
Because the underground is still hollow earth.
Still duality and polarity.
Right.
So, because there can't be an under and over.
There you get it now.
There only is.
There only is.
Right. So this has already happened, and you know.
But because it's already happened, it still has to finish.
Right,
because
and we
all
still,
the timeline wars means it has to finish.
And we still have to sit here and go through the motions of talking and carrying on this conversation as if we've never done it before.
Yes, but at the same time, it's our free will to stop it. See, that's the crazy part about being a free-willed planet.
Oh, okay. You mean to stop the conversation, or to stop
the event?
Oh. Now the event is not something we want to stop, is it? Hell no.
The sleep people want to stop it, though, because they're in domination and control.
Right.
Their tacit consent being taken.
Right, and so you have a huge...
manifesting, co-creating beings. We can manifest our own destruction or our own healing.
Right.
And some will manifest personal destruction in their own dream world until they're ready to come out. And there'll be those of us who parachute into these worlds and try to heal them and lure them out. And that a big portion of our society, that will be their job.
Yeah.
And many of the controllers will have to use their skills for good to help people out of that. That will be their restitution.
Right. That makes perfect sense.
Because they understand what put them in there, and they can understand what gets
them out the fastest. So it would be logical to get those people that have, exactly. So that would entail the use of all the control rooms.
Correct. Which would raise the vibration of Earth and the grid, and you'd be able to see the grid on the line and in the sky.
Right. So we'll be looking. Some of us will be looking, and we'll all of a sudden see things that weren't there before. And are the controllers involved with the control rooms?
Yes.
And there are how many control rooms?
40.
40.
But 21 of them have been found. 19 have not been found.
Now, do we know if those 19 are?
We talked about in the episode about Lemuria, Hollow Earth. The Hollow Earth has access to the other 19.
And
those are their primary defensive systems and offensive systems of Earth, and they made sure that those would never be gotten into the weapon systems.
Wonderful. And
weapons drive control.
Oh, good. Not like there are not enough weapons, etheric satellites and so on and so forth.
It's like, so the technology of the human body, the technology that's in the human body, sounds like it's one of the prizes of playing this particular game. That you actually
the ultimate prize.
The ultimate prize. And that's because of the way it's kitted out to experience a huge range of emotions, as well as so you get greater richness of experience, as well as the ability to travel and incarnate and manifest.
That and the way its light body is linked to its DNA body, and the fact that we go through this process of bringing the drama here, so many thousands of soul families come here and bring their codes too.
So the more codes you have, especially in a body like the human body, the more fun you have.
Yep.
It's all about the fun, folks. I had a feeling that was it. Okay, now getting back to the war theme, the grid wars. Now the grid that you're talking about is the incarnation grid.
Correct.
Okay, is that the only energetic grid that's in play here on the planet, or is it all is the grid all about incarnation?
Well, there's the incarnation grid.
Mm-hmm.
Just a quick background: there are 9 pyramid grids on Earth right now. And that's representative of the 9 times that Earth was refortified to prevent spiritual invasion. The dark guys won and then refortified the fortress. The light, were eventually beat off the fortification, capped it back, and they refortified it. So on and so forth until you have 9 levels of fortification. No world has ever been fortified to this level anywhere. And the beings were able to capture the first 2 layers of the grid. The first is the astral incarnation grid, and the second is the surface energetic grid of the planet. The surface energetic grid of the planet is how the sacred dimension, the sacred geometry cities collate energy and create trapped dream times, and the incarnation grid determines who gets to migrate here and allows them to insert fine print. They control those 2 layers. They don't control the other 7 layers, because there's 40 separate control rooms that were built into the last layer of fortification. And there's a special thing built into that, so no one can control the complete 9 layers unless all of the invested species DNA is represented in the 40 control rooms acting as a unified unit. In an example, if you see the movies where somebody's going to launch a nuclear missile, you have to have 2 keys. Well, there's 40 control rooms that the 2,300 separate invested races here would all have to be invested in, would all have to agree at the exact same time, where there's a telepathic artificial intelligence determining if they're being forced into activation.
Where are the control rooms? Are they energetic, physical?
No, they're physical control rooms. One's near the Bosnian pyramid. One's near Giza. They're spread all over. There's several here in America and South America. They're all underground. And they're very close to the pyramid structures here. And there's a couple that are deep in the ocean.
Okay.
And only 21 have actually been found.
So the ones that have been found, I presume they've been found, by the military or by some secret aspect of the control system.
Mm-hmm.
And are they actually manned? Are they things where there's actually beings in those control rooms controlling things? Or do they simply, exist and run automatically?
They were put on automatic control during the last fall of Atlantis, and it was set. Basically, the pyramid control grid literally controls the energy of our ley lines, our grids, and what determines how much energy is available for consciousness here on the planet. Earth was originally a 7th-dimensional vibration planet, and it was reduced to a 3rd-dimensional planet by literally fortifying the planet and reducing the energy in the actual available grid lines. So we're stuck in this limited energy.
Okay, so they actually created a lack.
Yep.
They removed the abundance of energy as part of the control system.
Yep. And many of these are manned, but it requires DNA. Like some control rooms, you have to have heavy amount of Atlantean and Lemurian and Pleiadian DNA. Others, you need insectoid DNA and reptilian DNA hybrided with a first species human DNA. And it also looks at soul family status. That was one of the reasons these 15 multidimensional beings interbred with everything on the planet that they could find, was so that they could ultimately take over all 40 control rooms.
There's a TV series called Stargate, and one of the technologies that's in there requires the right DNA for any particular individual to be able to operate it. I presume that information is drawn from the way these control rooms work.
Yeah, they do soft disclosure in that show a lot.
Yep.
A lot of soft disclosure.
Yep, I had a feeling it was the case, because there's a couple of other things that have popped up that appear in various in our conversation that appear in various shows, and as you say, deniability, soft disclosure, it's all part of the same thing. So they're interbreeding so that that members of that physical family can actually, if they land in these control rooms, can actually use the control room.
That's correct.
Okay, so if we've got about half the control rooms running on auto and the other half running on some sort of manual control or being interfered with, so does that mean they have partial control over is that the reason they've only got partial control over the grid? The fact they don't
Correct.
have all the control rooms?
Correct.
Okay.
It basically works down. The 15 multidimensional beings own 11 of the 20 found control rooms, and the other 9 are taken over by the good guys in many different forms, from the light beings to the Pleiadians to the good guys that are within the government. So, and a lot of those good guy factions don't agree with the other good guy factions, and that's ultimately why none of this was resolved in the 60s. The good guys just were too egotistical with each other. While the bad guys were a unified source.
Okay, so we have beings actually running these control rooms. Which aspect of government are they actually embedded? Where do they slot into government, or is this all way, when I say government, I mean we're talking Black Project type personnel, military personnel, or are they just completely outside of that in the really secret aspects of the control families?
There are 4 control rooms that are run by military organizations. one in Russia, one in America, one in Brazil, and one in Japan. And the one in Japan, essentially the good guys, we'll just say that, are there, but they're there with as much soul family as they can have, so they have full operation of their control room. The one in Brazil is kind of mixed. You've got a mixture of good guys and bad guys and people trying to vie for control, some people trying to lock the system out. And the one here in America, the best way to describe it, it's a fully functional control room, but there's so much government interference with it that it's very hard for anyone to actually use it for any good or bad. There's so much bureaucracy within it. All right, and then the other one, the best way to describe it, it's stuck in bureaucracy, but there's such a corrupt level of bureaucracy from the European groups that you can only get a few effects out of it now. And that's why these multidimensional beings are limited to the incarnation grid as well as the surface grid layers. There's not any type of unity amongst the control rooms.
Yeah, so to effect real control, you actually have to control all of them.
Yep.
So what effects can that level, the 40 control rooms, controlling the surface level of the grid, what effects can it generate? What can they, when they dial their knobs and push their buttons, what is it they can actually do?
A single control room or all of them?
All of them as a unit. Say they're all being controlled by the one set of, the one group of beings, they're all benevolent, what could they do for us?
If all 40 control rooms had all the proper DNA codes inside them and the artificial intelligence that oversees it agrees that nothing's being done in force, you can actually open up the fortress grid and then return Earth to a seventh dimensional seed planet. And all consciousness on it would instantly expand and be healed.
Okay, so two things come out of that. An AI overseeing this. Is that the Dark Knight? The satellite?
No. This AI was created by Earth itself. It was an artificial intelligence that was created about 38 million years ago, and its purpose was to oversee the DNA interbreeding of Earth and to use the control room as an observational concept of DNA and the advancement of interbreeding. And the control room's purpose, the breeding groups were supposed to be able to go into the control room and use the predictive model of breeding to determine how well a certain lineage would allow other soul families or soul groups in it. And then that would also determine what womb chakra you should be on Earth. Earth's original purpose was to create DNA wisdom to be transferred to the blank Akashic records of new planets. Many of the beings that were here were supposed to go through 30, 40, or 50 generations and living in a soul family, and then one of them would be high enough vibration that it could leave Earth as an energy being and literally manifest a planet, and that planet would be that soul's new body. And then it would await DNA wisdom that would be transferred from the womb chakra to a blank Akashic record. Then that new soul who made a planet could invite souls to migrate there, and there would be an encyclopedia of DNA for them to incarnate into.
Okay, so Earth's original function then was definitely like I guess you'd say more like a nursery. By that I mean a plant nursery, or if you like, a breeding farm. But that the souls were meant to actually graduate here at a really high level and actually incarnate as planetary beings.
Or sons.
Or sons. So it's
the process to become a son is several members of a single soul family ascend to the level that they can make a contract with the universe itself, the prime universal being, and then they come together as a solar sun family, and they literally combine all of their energies to make a sun. And inside that, each separate solar family creates an energetic city, which is a hub for immigration of souls from other planets. And that hub has the basic codes of the DNA that they grew up with from the original planet where they ascended from.
Hence the emphasis on DNA in all aspects of this discussion. It's all about the DNA. Okay, now if if all 40 control rooms are under control, and you wanted to dial the consciousness up or dial it down, you could do that at will.
There would have to be a collective agreement amongst all members investing into the control room. The AI is very specific about that. It would have to be a collective agreement.
Assuming that
Yep.
is in place, yes, you could actually, if the collective agreement was in place, you could actually raise the level of consciousness. Okay, so we're heading up. Actually, before I get on to what you would call the event, we're sort of working our way down the the war system that they've got running here. Timeline wars, grid wars. They're fighting over the incarnation grid so they can get control of the DNA groups, so they can control the soul families that actually come here. Down at ground level, they're playing mind wars on the population.
Yep.
Now, the mind wars are very obviously played out in the media.
Yep.
And I guess the education system is the other place where the mind wars actually are practiced most heavily. What about the mind wars using technology to affect the mindset of the population? There's various, I won't call them urban myths, because there's got to be a physical reality to this. Various uses of technology, like HARP, like the mobile phone grid, like the electrical grid, used to actually influence minds as well as the media. Have you got any information about physically which bits are used most aggressively against us to actually affect our minds?
Yes, I do. I'll start with the cell phone. When the cell phone was created, its actual purpose was to expand communication and to put people into a much more higher energy state, and instead of in that relaxed state where you can go and meditate. And the purpose of a cell phone is to constantly be broadcasting energy that keeps your mind aware of the consciousness of the cell phone grid. We are telepathic beings, and the cell phone is an unshielded device. Unshielded because your mind can instantly connect to it. There are people that can't live without a cell phone now because their mind has psychically linked to the grid of the cell phone network. The cell phone network's purpose is to make you actually be addicted to it through this unshielded concept. Even though it has outstanding technological and communicative purposes, the cell phone, there are people that sleep with their cell phone next to the bed. That influences your dream time, and it prevents you from fully functioning in your dream energies. And let's say we'll go to wireless technology for your computers. That's even a higher frequency than the cell phones in a energetic sense for your dream world. So you're being bombarded by your cell phone, you're being bombarded by your wireless internet, and the whole purpose is to keep your mind awake enough so you can't relax into theta energies and get dream energy and start psychic advancement, start healing on yourself. That's why disconnecting from them, turning them off when you go to sleep, is vitally important.
Now, the actual cell phone network itself is reputedly operating at a much higher level in the sense of power output than they actually talk about. Now, I actually have I used to be a ham radio operator, so I'm aware of how the actual radio transmission systems work, the sorts of power levels required to achieve various things. I actually saw the base of a cell tower once with its. This was a cell tower with one single tower. It wasn't a metal frame tower. It was just one single shaft going up. It was a very quite a modern thing, and it was about 30, 40-foot tower high up on a hill in suburbia. And the bottom of it was open. The techo was working on something. And man, the cabling going up into that thing was massive. Okay, the size of the conductors that they had running up into that tower out of the unit on the ground that was running it was just ridiculous. They looked like they were putting out kilowatts. Now these things are supposed to be short distance, running in cells, and with some sort of cell overlap, so that the actual as you move around, you'd never lose the signal. But I think the power levels are way higher than they talk about, because to run a say a 200 watt system, okay, takes a certain amount of grunt, and I was looking at technology that was way above that. So I suspect they're pumping out far more power than we realise. Would that match with what you're seeing of what you know of the grid? Yeah.
Absolutely.
So
there's also an artificial intelligence that functions within the cell phone network that looks for people that have devices on them all the time and is constantly interacting with your outer energy aura, dumping data on you, so the sub-psychic senses that you have that are suppressed stay suppressed.
So it's all about keeping our consciousness engaged so that we can't engage our subtle energies at all.
Yep.
And which obviously is, it's negating the technology in the human body.
Exactly.
All the way through. And they're doing that, they're doing that with physical compounds as well, in our foods, in the air, and in the water. Now, I presume they all work together, the fluoride in the water, the aspartame in the food, whatever else it is they're putting in the food, the drugs that they use as part of the medical system, it all seems to be, formulaically tying our body in knots so that we can't engage with our real technology.
Correct. And they use the control rooms to look at the Earth's atmosphere, the cell phone towers, the technology, how it interacts with everyone. These control rooms allow them to scan the whole planet and make predictive models. If they change frequencies on one cell tower, how it will interact with the sacred geometry city a little farther away or closer. And that's how they chart where they want to put new cell phone towers, if they want to change the way a sacred geometry city dreams, or if they want to make one city much less powerful or more powerful. Because if they want to target a city and milk it of psychic energy, which they frequently do, they'll build towers or turn up the volume on towers for quite a period of time during a high moon, and literally use part of the control features in the control rooms to raise the ley lines raise the power on level on them for a few hours.
They actually, the whole of the technological grid systems, well, say the internet. The internet's, in and of itself, it's a different kind of grid. It's reaching into us via, a different interface to the cell phones. It's not as energetic. But the internet itself, is there an energetic aspect to the transmission of the internet signal? The internet's really a transport system for technology, but is it affecting us physically the way that the other radio grids do, or is it just simply playing with our heads?
The wireless network is meant to, the wireless connective, the wireless web is meant to limit you even more. If you're hardwired in with nothing around you except a standard cell tower, the internet is quite benign, but it was actually designed to be benign in that way. But when you start building server farms, you can store energy beings in the server farms and then use the internet connection to flood something with a parasitic psychic entity or psychic parasite.
So they kind of load up the server farms with parasitic entities. Can they direct the destination of those entities?
Yes, they can.
So they can attack you.
Yep, they can. And I use this, some of these websites that are created overnight and all of a sudden come out with a shocking piece of information like, the trains are moving a bunch of tanks out of California, and they show a mile-long train with a bunch of tanks on it. Mm-hmm. That video and that site is a server farm loaded full of parasites, so they can spread that propaganda, and you will spread that. You'll become a transmission to spread those parasites even more.
How long-lived are the parasites?
So they can live forever until you get rid of them.
How do you get rid of them?
Kill them.
How do you get rid of them?
You start with enforcing your sacred space, identifying what needs to be healed in yourself, where they attach to your grid, your energetic grid. There's all sorts of things. Removing attached entities, hundreds and thousands of people that are very, very effective at it. And these parasitic entities naturally exist here, and there are ones that were brought from other planets to specifically be very, very nasty.
and they're using the internet server systems to actually distribute those at will.
Yep, and internet porn sites are the classic example of making literally herds, millions of these entities. And when, you know, men and women go and use those sites for whatever purpose, your energy field is open to them, and they get right in you. And that's why internet porn is such a horrible addiction in this world.
I feel like our entire civilization is basically in prison. I just have this picture of a medieval palisade. Now, palisade is actually a wooden fence, if you like. Mm-hmm. Wooden fence on top of, usually on top of a mound, surrounding an enclosure. It's usually for protection, usually. But the tops of the spikes, the tops of the wooden palisade is carved into a spike. Very difficult to get over. Very simple, no metal involved. And as I say, usually for protection from the outside, but I think we're stuck in one, and I think it's a really, really, really nasty one. So we'll talk about how we get out of that in a minute. The HARP system, there used to be military transmission systems consisting of very large towers that were, you know, ostensibly used by the military for communicating over long distances, communicating to submarines. They've been gradually phased out, and what we've seen in its stead is satellite technology transmitting over long distances, and HARP technology, which is projecting itself around the planet, but, you know, reflecting off the ionosphere the way the ham radio stuff does. So there's two other kinds of systems where they're projecting energy around. Are either of those involved in this control grid?
Absolutely. HARP can affect weather, which ultimately can affect the mood of the people. Example, they could target one area to make whoever's got parasitic entities on them. Basically, the HARP activates the parasitic entities, so they suck out even more energy. And the whole purpose of HARP is to make milking a city very easy, as well as to create natural disasters that create fear, as well as to modify the sacred geometry of a city so it can be more empowered, so that they need to spend less energy on the system of domination and control there. So that's why they would use HARP to target anywhere people are going to be out to march.
Essentially, it's stirring up emotions.
Yep.
Now, the satellite transmission system, again, how does that play into this?
Satellite transmission systems in a worldwide communication grid, it has the non-nefarious side of it, where it broadcasts your cable, your radio, all the other communications things that, you know, a world needs. On another level, it allows them to listen to all communications, quite literally, because they're using a centralized satellite system. And then there are a series of artificial intelligences in there that can literally hijack streams and put them on an alternate network. And 2, 3, or 4 people all of a sudden could never realize their streams of information have been hijacked, and they can fill those people full of alternate concepts, which will set them up for a target from the satellite that can put them on an alternate timeline.
An alternate timeline?
Correct. If you believe you're on an alternate timeline, and all the communication factors that you function with say you're on an alternate timeline, and you never knew your grid was hijacked, you create that alternate timeline.
Okay.
Using the creator being against us. A lot of that artificial technology, artificial intelligence has been taken out, and we're on a unified timeline, but that's the definition of what those satellites would do. They're called the Gozar 9 ethereal satellites, and they interfunction with all the other satellites that are up there.
The TV system, the television sets that they're actually flogging these days, the LED sets, etc. The earlier technology of television, there was the theory kicking around that they're actually overlaying what's called, I think it's called a Lilly signal or a Lilly pattern onto the signal to increase the hypnotic aspect of the use of TV to make it more addicted.
Absolutely.
And that the technique they were using in the digital systems with the LCD, LED type screens was actually more sophisticated and even more effective. Did they shift the technology they were using when they went over to the LED system, or leverage the digital system to make it more hypnotic, more addictive, more effective?
Absolutely did. And the LED system, light emitting diode system, it has color patterns in it that uses sacred geometry, fractals within it that not only can bring you into theta state and you'd never know it, but bombard you with subliminal messages while you're in theta state.
So,
and it can be individualized through the LED TVs because there's enough processing power that they can identify through the light emitting diodes how many people are in the room.
And can they detect anything about those people?
Yep. Because they have satellites that can completely scan the whole world. And not to mention the control rooms that can target whole cities. And the whole cities has a complete rundown of the entire genetic makeup of each person. That's why when people are born into this world, they create these crazy contracts and screwed up wiring jobs so that the identifying system doesn't realize who they really are. Last week I was telling about how Michael has, such an intricate contract and an intricate screwed up wiring job. That's why so many people come into this world not in the right soul family on purpose so that they can be here at this time and be camouflaged from the sensing systems.
It's a cloaking system then.
Yep.
They can have souls in here whose real purpose is disguised because the soul contract is misleading.
Yep.
And so they're basically secret squirrels.
Yep.
As you would say. So they can actually drill down, using the control rooms and the grid, they can drill down to an individual.
Yep.
And can they actually just observe the individual, or can they affect the individual from the control rooms?
They can just observe from the control rooms, but the TV technology, light emitting diode technology, and the satellites is the control mechanism.
So they're, we really are, if you like, puppeted to a great extent.
Well, a lot of us become very callous to that energy and can block it out, though. And that's been the need for ever-evolving technology. And that's why they want you to get new TVs every 2 years so they can put more technology in it so that you don't build up the callousness to it.
What are the techniques that you'd recommend for blocking that out?
Honestly, it comes down to countering the energy that's coming through the TV or through your wireless systems. Turn off your cell phone, turn off your wireless, the internet when you're not using it. When you go to sleep, turn it off. Turn off your cell phone. As for televisions, I absolutely recommend that you superglue crystals to the back of the TV and you empower those crystals frequently, or put a piece of Velcro on them and make sure you wash them every couple days so that they begin to absorb that vibration. Let's put them out in the sunlight and give them positive words saying that this is for entertainment alone. This is not to manipulate any of my spiritual contracts. Because a lot of those programs in there are just meant to maybe tweak your contract a little bit.
What kind of crystals do you recommend?
Regular clear quartz, amethyst, or obsidian.
Size doesn't matter?
Depending on the size of the TV. If it's like a 60-inch TV, I would get four crystals, one for each corner, and the size of your thumb.
So is it fair to say that things will begin to get very strange for a while because you will be
and there will be other timeouts.
Oh, okay.
But timeouts in a different way.
How so?
Let's think of the way an American football game works.
Okay.
You're down to 3 minutes. The game's tied. There's a 2-minute warning coming.
Right.
And you both got 3 timeouts left.
Right.
That means in American football time, that could go an hour and 25 minutes easily.
Oh. Yeah.
That's where we're at now.
Okay.
So the forces of dark realize that they've already lost, and are going to do whatever they can do to save their own butts, to not be in the choice of galactic recyclement. They're going to check their own ego there some way, shape, or form. The ones that don't care will run the program to the end and be removed.
Right.
The light forces that are in zealot nature and are battling the other ones that are in ego will also have sets of timeouts and will be given choices to figure out what they're going to do.
Because they're also out of control.
Out of control in a contractual form.
Yeah.
Then the people like us that are like me or like you that are just here to be a part of resistance for the Earth and we don't care about their political propagandas are going to exude unity consciousness in a neutral way, and that will outweigh polarity. So there'll be unity consciousness that accepts both polarities but only allows you to perceive it as the neutral when you put it into your cellular memory.
Right.
Then there's light polarity that only going to allowing the light beliefs, and the dark polarity only allowing the dark beliefs. So all three of those will have to figure out how to work together.
Right. Right. And whatever is unable to work into the new equation, they're gone.
They're gone.
And we don't have to worry about any kind
We'll be in control of the control rooms, raise the density and vibration of the planet, and those entities that can't go through the incremental increasing of energy on the grid won't be able to live here.
Right.
And that includes some of the galactic brothers and sisters that are here right now.
Yeah.
They literally won't be able to live here because they haven't raised their vibration, and not enough of us have left to help them in their graduation process.